The moment Jonathan's father slid the glossy photographs across the mahogany desk, the 17-year-old felt his stomach turn. 6 stunning faces stared back at him from the images, each woman more breathtaking than the last. Models, his father called them. Potential mothers. Carefully selected from exclusive agencies across 3 continents. Women who would photograph well at charity galas. Women who would enhance the family brand. Women who would never embarrass the Wellington name. Jonathan's hands trembled as he touched the edges of the photographs. Not from excitement, but from a grief so profound it threatened to swallow him whole. His real mother had been gone for only 8 months, and already his father was orchestrating her replacement like he was hiring a new executive assistant. "Choose one," Richard Wellington said, his voice carrying the same tone he used in boardroom negotiations. "You're old enough to have a say in who joins our family. I want you to be comfortable with whoever becomes your stepmother." Comfortable. The word echoed in Jonathan's mind like a cruel joke. How could anyone be comfortable with this transaction masquerading as family building? But he knew better than to argue. Richard Wellington hadn't built a billion-dollar empire by accepting no for an answer, and he certainly wouldn't start with his own son. Jonathan's eyes drifted past the photographs to the window, overlooking the estate gardens, where he could see a familiar figure tending to the rose bushes his mother had loved. Maria had worked for the Wellington family for 12 years. Arriving from Guatemala when Jonathan was just 5 years old. She had started as an assistant housekeeper, quietly efficient and almost invisible in the way wealthy families preferred their staff to be. But to Jonathan, Maria had never been invisible. When his mother was diagnosed with cancer 3 years ago, Maria had transformed from household staff into something far more precious. She had sat with his mother during the worst days, holding her hand through chemotherapy sessions. When his father was too busy, closing deals in Singapore or Dubai, she had learned to cook his mother's favorite foods, adjusted to accommodate the nausea and changing appetites. She had read poetry aloud in her gentle, accented voice when his mother was too weak to hold a book. And when the end came, Maria had been there, weeping as genuinely as any family member, her tears falling onto his mother's still hand. In the months after the funeral, Maria had quietly stepped into the enormous void left behind. She made sure Jonathan ate breakfast before school. She asked about his soccer games and actually listened to his answers. She left his mother's favorite cookies on his desk when he studied late into the night. She never tried to replace his mother, never overstepped, but her kindness had been the only thing that made the house feel less like a mausoleum. "Jonathan, I'm waiting," his father said, impatience creeping into his voice. "Katerina here is Russian, ranked in the top 50 international models. Alessandra is Brazilian, very popular on social media, 28 million followers. Chen, Lai walked in Milan and Paris. Any of these women would be an asset to our family. An asset." Jonathan felt something shift inside him, a quiet rebellion that had been building for months. He looked at his father, really looked at him, and saw a man who had forgotten what family actually meant. Richard Wellington could calculate profit margins and market share with surgical precision, but he had lost the ability to measure what truly mattered. "What if I don't choose any of them?" Jonathan asked quietly. His father's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me? What if I want to choose someone else? You said I could have a say in who joins our family." Richard leaned back in his leather chair, a slight smile playing at his lips. He thought his son was negotiating, playing a business game he'd taught him. "All right. Who did you have in mind?" "There are other agencies. I can have portfolios sent over by tomorrow." "I choose Maria." The silence that followed was absolute. Richard Wellington's smile vanished, replaced by an expression of complete incomprehension, as if his son had suddenly started speaking in an ancient, forgotten language. "The maid?" His father's voice was barely above a whisper, heavy with disbelief. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," Jonathan said, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. "You told me to choose someone who would join our family. Maria already is our family. She's been more of a mother to me this past year than anyone else could be." Richard stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward. "This is ridiculous." "She's an employee. She's here to clean and cook, not to what? Not to care about us? Not to show up every single day and actually see us as human beings instead of obligations on a calendar?" Jonathan's voice rose. months of suppressed grief and anger finally breaking through. She loved Mom, really loved her. Not because she was Mrs. Wellington, wife of a billionaire, but because she was a person worth loving. You're a child. You don't understand how the world works. I understand that you're trying to hire a mother the same way. You'd hire a vice president. I understand that you've looked at 6 photographs and not once asked about who these women actually are. Are they kind? Do they laugh? Would they care if I was hurting? Jonathan's eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. Mom used to say that money can buy comfort but not humanity. I didn't understand what she meant until now. Richard moved to the window, his back to his son, shoulders rigid with tension. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired. Maria is a good woman. I'm not disputing that, but there are expectations, Jonathan. Society expects certain things from people in our position. Then maybe we're in the wrong position, Jonathan said quietly. Maybe we need to care less about what society expects and more about what's actually right. The door to the study opened quietly, and Maria herself appeared, carrying a tray with coffee. She froze when she saw both Wellington men staring at her, the tension in the room palpable. I'm sorry, she said softly, preparing to retreat. I didn't mean to interrupt. Maria, wait, Jonathan said. Don't go. She looked between father and son, confusion and concern crossing her kind face. Richard remained silent, and in that silence, Jonathan found his courage. Maria, I need to ask you something. If you could choose any life for yourself, what would it look like? She set down the tray with trembling hands. Mr. Jonathan, I don't understand. Please, just answer honestly. Maria's eyes welled with tears. I would choose a life where I mattered to someone, where I was seen not for what I could do, but for who I am. I would choose to be part of a family that loved each other, really loved each other. Her voice broke. Your mother gave me that gift. She never treated me like I was less than human. I would choose to honor her memory by caring for the people she loved most. Jonathan turned to his father. Did you hear that? That's what a mother sounds like. Not someone chosen from a catalog because she photographs well. Someone who shows up because she actually cares. Richard Wellington stood at the crossroads of his own making. He could dismiss his son's words, proceed with his calculated plan, and maintain the carefully constructed image he'd spent decades building. Or he could do something he hadn't done in years. Listen to his heart instead of his spreadsheets. He walked slowly toward Maria, and she lowered her eyes respectfully. But Richard did something that shocked them both. He took her hand gently in his. I've been a fool, he said simply. My wife saw things clearly and so does my son. I've been so afraid of losing control, of showing weakness, that I forgot what strength actually looks like. He looked at Maria with new eyes. You've given my family more in the past year than I can ever repay. Not because you were paid to, but because you chose to. That's who I want in my son's life. If you'll consider it, that's who I'd like in mine as well. Maria's tears fell freely now. Mr. Wellington, I don't need anything to change. I'm happy to continue. As family, Richard interrupted. Not as an employee. As someone we value for exactly who you are. Jonathan watched as 3 broken people stood together in the fading afternoon light, united by loss but choosing love. His father would have months of explaining to do to his business associates, to his country club friends, to the society pages that tracked his every move. But as Richard Wellington held Maria's hand and his son's shoulder, he looked more like a father than he had in years. The glossy photographs still lay on the desk, perfect faces frozen in professional smiles. But in the real world, where kindness mattered more than appearances and humanity trumped status, a real family was being reborn, not through transactions or social climbing, but through the simple, revolutionary act of seeing each other's worth. Maria would never walk a runway or grace magazine covers. She would never be what society expected for the Wellington family. But she was exactly what they needed. Someone who knew that love wasn't bought or arranged, but given freely, one act of kindness at a time. And in the end, that made all the difference.